Fuck with me. Fourth and Fantasy back at it again with another episode. My name is Hancho, and this is my guy.
Siriaco, the streets to call me Rocco.
And we're bringing you another episode brought to you by FastDraft, the fastest best ball game out there, where you can win over $2,500,000 in cash prizes playing all rookie, all flex, and all defense formats. And if you use our promo codes fourth, FastDraft will double your first deposit up to $50. I repeat, if you use our promo codes fourth or fourth, for a fast drive will give you up to $50 and double your first deposit. Now, let's get into the nitty gritty and all that is not a titty. My name is Glenn. Listen, I'm hitting all the bars today. I actually feel great. Today's a wonderful Sunday. I feel like we had a great show Friday. We was on the Dynasty Dogs platform.
Fantastic.
Great time. We was giving out great gems for QB and I believe running back buys, or was it QB and wide receivers? I feel like yesterday was such a fuzz. I'm forgetting how Friday went.
QB and RBs.
Yes, sir. And it was a wonderful time. It was. Now, today we're going to be talking about foundational pieces to build your dynasty fantasy football team with. When we talk about foundational pieces, Rocco, how do you define that?
All right, yeah, I just have some notes, some real scientific notes I wrote before the podcast.
Yes, sir.
Basically, what I want as foundational is, well, when I think about foundational, I think about the building blocks are the studs that I need to win a ship. I mean, anybody can get lucky and sneak into the playoffs and win a ship, but to feel really good about that ship, this is what I need. I need two top 15 quarterbacks. I can mix and match if I have like one of the top five guys. I can maybe get away with a sub 15 guy at QB2. Preferably, I would want two top 15 guys. And at the flex positions, meaning wide receiver and running back, I want four number ones, top 12 at their position. And that can be either 2 and 2, or I can have one running back and three wide receivers. It's very hard to get three at the running back position. I would rather wide receiver just because of the longevity. Tight end,
Agreed.
that's a bonus, really. If you have a stud tight end, you know, then you are basically unbeatable unless you have injuries. But that's basically kind of my theory on foundational pieces that will make me feel really good about winning the championship.
And just to confirm again, Rocco, these are when you talk about the required pieces for foundational. This is across all positions, not at a particular position. They're not saying you need four top 12 receivers on your squad. You're talking about across the board top 12 at their
Yeah,
respective positions.
yeah. I mean, I exclude tight end and quarterback in that discussion,
Mm-hmm.
because a top 12 tight end, that ain't shit. That's like a wide receiver six, to
Bro,
be
yep.
honest. There's really only a couple guys near the top, and then another tier after that. But a top 12 tight end, I mean, if you have a top 12 guy, you could have a top 20 guy. There ain't much fucking separating those guys.
Mhm.
But at wide receiver and running back, I want four number ones. And
Hey,
you can
listen,
mix
I
and
feel.
match.
Sorry, my bad, go ahead. I thought you was done.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
you can mix and match those. But I would feel really good about having four number ones at those positions, along with those foundational quarterbacks.
Yeah, I feel pretty good. How I like to build my teams, as I talked about in a few of our episodes, is I'm very much about having a pretty good to great group of wide receivers. And then I at least want somebody I consider as a QB1. So a pretty good to great to high QB1. And then if I get another I say top 15, top 18, top 20 ish QB2, I'm cool. But if I could push for a top 15, another QB2 as my top 15 as my QB2, I feel pretty good. But I do very much go heavy receivers. So let's say in that first 2 rounds, I'm going receiver. I might pick up my QB in that third round
Mm-hmm.
ish, pick up another receiver that in that fourth round, just depending on how the board falls to me. But I do agree where your foundational pieces are guys that these are players that are your heavy hitters of your team where you are most of your points are going to be coming from basically, right? So to start it off, let's talk about the QBs, the guys that we feel pretty good having as our guys, whether it's a QB1, QB2, and hell, QB3. Well, I wouldn't even think QB3 would be your foundational piece. So let's go with your QB1s of guys that you look for.
All right. So, like I was saying, um, if you have any of these guys, I can have a little bit more versatility, a little bit more leeway in my QB2. So this is my guys that are top end number ones, foundational pieces are Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, even as a second year player, uh, and Jalen Hurts. Those guys are super elite number ones. And if I have those guys, I feel a little bit better about mixing and matching my number two at the QB position.
I can get groovy with that one, actually. I would even throw my boy as people. I think he's very underrated at this point, but he has shown nothing but QB1 type traits, QB1 production since he got to Tampa Bay, and I think that one gave it away. My boy Baker Mayfield, even though he is 30 years old, honestly, I think he's shown everything that Tampa has been missing since Tom Brady retired, and they now I think could have went further if it wasn't for the injury bug last year. I believe the Buccaneers were making a very good headway to being a real problem in the NFC. So Baker Mayfield is a guy when I'm thinking at my draft strategy. Once again, I like to be able to have a very elite wide receiver core. So
Mm-hmm.
Baker Mayfield gives me the option to wait a little bit if I want to go that direction. And if I see the board is falling real sexy, because sometimes Rocco, you notice where there's leagues where sometimes people don't value that core. You're going through the draft and then you're looking at it like, damn, QBs aren't really coming off the board like that, and you're like, all right, maybe I can wait a little bit. And then you're waiting, and next thing you know, your best options right now are selecting those wide receivers or running backs because people are just taking those off the rip. But Baker Mayfield gives me the option to wait a little bit as on my QB1 if I need to. If I see let's say hell, let's a combo that I absolutely loved last year going with was CD Lamb, Drake London. Shoot, every draft that we were in, you saw that was my most beautiful combo was CD Lamb and Drake London,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would come back again if there was hell a Garrett Wilson, a Tyreek Hill before he had the slump last year. I would go that option, then go back to going Baker Mayfield as my QB1 because honestly, he gave you top five production last year. He was in the top five finishes of quarterbacks, and I believe he deserves to be as a honorable mention as a QB1 as a foundational piece. I love him on my dynasty teams.
Yeah. The only pushback I would have there is my super elite number ones. Um, Besides Joe Burrow, they're all elite at running, so they bring that extra Konami upside. So that's the only pushback that I would have, and the three offensive coordinators in 3 years makes me a little nervous. I think that's why I would rather have him as a super elite number two. Um, but that's a good call as well because he was top five last year, and if he keeps
Mm.
building off of that top five season, then everybody's gonna have him in their super elite category.
Yeah, and also it goes back to how your scoring is because, like you just said, where guys that you consider in that top three realm have rushing upside,
Hmm.
4 point passing, that's very much a big value to those guys. I think Baker Mayfield gains more value in those 6 point passing touchdown leagues because
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
usually because he's usually in the top five of passing touchdowns for the last 2 seasons. That is, he's been in the top five of passing touchdowns. So I do like me a Baker Mayfield, and then the other guys that you spoke about as your QB ones, like a good, like you should say, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. Love, I think he has grown on me the more this past year in fantasy. I probably only have one share of Jalen Hurts, but nevertheless, I can see why some I see why people go his direction in that round one because he kind of has a safe floor for you, especially now with the tush push having another year in the NFL. He gives you a safe floor of production.
yeah.
Go ahead, Rocco.
Those double digit touchdowns are just hard to keep up with, with the other quarterbacks because every year he's going to get you 10 or
Right.
maybe more touchdowns.
And that was a note that
So
I had in my notes. 4 out of his 5 seasons, he had 10 plus rushing touchdowns. 4 out of his 5 seasons, he had top 10 QB finishes. The
mhm.
only year that he didn't finish as a top 10 QB was his rookie year. So I think that offense is built for him, built around him to succeed. And we're going to see how this new year with the new offensive coordinator goes. I actually think we see a better or more better passing production from Jalen Hurts considered from last year. I do think Kellen Moore had a little bit to do with his passing or his because he had a little bit of a down year last year, but I think going forward, Jalen Hurts is one of those guys that you love to have in dynasty formats. And then if we're looking at other foundational quarterbacks, I believe these guys are worth mentioning. Bo Nix, I think he's a great
Mm.
piece. He's
Yeah,
25
yeah.
years
I had
old.
him. Sorry to interrupt, but
Oh, you're good,
I
brother.
had him like very close.
Hmm.
He was super close because he almost profiles like a um like a better passing Josh Allen, just kind of the way he runs. So he was
Hmm.
very close. It was hard to leave him out. I just feel better with him as a number two.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like I actually on one of my in my $75 one of my $75 leagues. He is my QB 2
Hmm.
with Bryce Young as my QB 3, and then Baker Mayfield as my QB 1. And I made it to the round before the championship where my guys just had an off week, but I was in the regular season, had the best, looking like one of the favorites for the chip. So I think that pair is actually a good duo to have. Another guy that I think is a good foundation piece and should get more love. I think is really hit or miss depending on if he is healthy for a full season. But it is a Justin Herbert who is 27 years old. So far he's had 2 out of 5 seasons with a top 10 QB finish. But if we're talking about top 15, that's 4 out of 5 seasons.
Hmm.
On the only season where he didn't finish in the top 15 was 2023, where he only played 13 games. But his foundation has improved, right? He does now have Lab McConkey to go along with Trey Harris. I think they improved at the tight end position with bringing in Conklin. And then we also will see what Aronde Gatson can provide for that overall offense. But I think in 2025, it's not crazy to say we could see the best that we've seen from Justin Herbert, just depending on how that overall offense goes. They drafted Omarion Hampton, so we also should see an improved rushing attack. They have one of the better offensive lines in the game, I think, in my opinion.
Hmm.
So Justin Herbert, I wouldn't say he is the bona fide QB1 on most of my teams. I think if I do have him, he's a safe QB2, and he is an underrated runner of the ball. But uh, I think I'm not upset if he's one of my foundational pieces. And I think he actually is a little bit more underrated in 2025. Consider if you're looking at other quarterbacks. But what do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I think he's definitely, he's right there. He's a guy that I would like to have as a foundational piece. If I had another guy that was closely associated, not associated, but another guy that was kind of in that same range.
Hmm.
If I had a Justin Herbert and say a Brock Purdy,
Hmm.
I would feel real good about that because I think Brock Purdy is another guy that's kind of in that same tier as a Justin Herbert, and right
Agreed.
there with a Bo Nix. He's a guy that helped me win a couple ships last year. And the underrated part about him is he will wheel too. He's
Mm.
got some little underrated wheels, as evidenced by his 144 yards in 2023, which is slight, value added and a couple touchdowns to go along with 31 touchdowns through the air. And last year, without CMC, and with a basically the whole offense was kind of banged up. You had Ricky Pearsall who got shot. You had Brandon Ayuk who went through his contract issues.
It was a wild
Started off
year.
slow, blew out his knee.
Hmm.
He was rolling for a good portion of that year with Jawan Jennings, a notorious blocker,
He's
as
up.
his number one wide receiver. And he put yards on that guy as well. And last year, as a runner, he had 323 yards and 5 touchdowns. So that's big time value added. He nearly had 4,000 yards, but only played in 15 games. So he would have definitely crossed the 4,000 yard threshold. So
For sure.
with some of those guys returning, Pearsall another year in the league. Hopefully Ayuk returning to form, and another year with Jawan Jennings, who kind of broke out last year. I think it's you know, Brock Purdy could push to get into at least, if not into that top tier, he can be right there in that next tier because he's so close right now. Especially with CMC returning, if CMC can give them a full year of health, like I'm projecting him to do,
Hmm.
that team's offense could be much improved this year and can be an offense you want to um, invest in this offseason while people still have a low opinion of that offense.
I feel like there's a couple guys we haven't mentioned yet. How do you feel about, and this could get a couple people riled up just because I know how you feel about this one particular guy in this group,
Is it gonna
but
get
like
you or is
this,
it gonna get me riled up?
like the CJ Strouds of the world. So we got CJ Stroud, we have like Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, who else? Patrick Mahomes, the GOAT right now of QBs. How do you feel about these guys?
um, these guys, these guys all have questions. These guys can all push for that top 15. They could even push for top 12, but they're a little bit more inconsistent.
Mm,
I invested a lot in Jordan Love after his 2023 season. He kind of fell flat in 2024, and they became a run-heavy team. A lot of that is because he got hurt in Brazil in that first game in international football, and he kind of never quite got to his 2023 heights that he got to, um, and a lot of those weapons, fell off with with his inconsistencies. So I mean, they drafted a wide receiver that can get open to all levels of the field, and Matthew Golden.
Mhm.
So hopefully he can kind of step into that number one role, and everybody else can slide in, because I think that team does need to pass more in 2025 if they want to get past the first round, or even make the playoffs, because it's a very competitive NFC.
Yeah.
And if they just rely on Josh Jacobs to the detriment of their passing offense, they're not going to get to where they want to go. So he could be a sneaky sleeper,
Mhm.
um, and I don't think I mind him as my number two if I have a guy that I can really count on as my number one. Um, and who else did you have?
There was Jordan Love,
C.J.
Callum,
Stroud.
yeah, CJ Stroud, yeah, or
Hmm. C.J.
Stroud,
Stroud. I
Stroud.
like Stroud. I feel like he's another guy that can kind of get close to that top tier. He
Yep.
doesn't bring the running element, so I don't think he can join that tier, but he can be close, and he is a guy that can handle a volume passing attack. I just think he didn't have the horses last year, especially with Nico Collins missing a lot of time, Tank Dell.
I like that
Coming
metaphor.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
like that right there. I like
Tank
that.
Dell, Tank Dell, poor guy, man. It made me feel so bad.
Mm.
He was coming off the injury. It took him so long to get into that offense. He finally had a good game, 100 yards. I think he had a touchdown, and he just destroyed his knee on that touchdown. But you can see the front office making moves to invest in that passing game,
Yeah,
because they don't ever want that to happen to CJ Stroud again, where he has no weapons,
it
outside
was
of
bad.
Nico Collins. And Nico Collins had to take on so much responsibility that he really tore that hamstring pretty bad, running as fast as he could to get that touchdown.
Mm.
But they brought in Christian Kirk. They brought in a Jalen Noel,
And Jaden Higgins.
Higgins.
Yep.
So he has the weapons now. So I can see that team's offense taking a leap in 2025. And as a QB too, I think I don't mind him, at all. I think he's a very rock solid QB too, and I think he can be considered a foundational piece if you pair him up with, say, Justin Herbert. I feel really good about my passing, my quarterbacks. As far as Patrick Mahomes,
Hold on.
he
And
could
Rock,
have.
before
Go ahead.
you go on Patrick Mahomes, I just want to put out the little note that any Texans receiver that was on the roster before the draft must feel like total shit, because not only did them boys go out and, and go get Christian Kirk, traded for the boy, and because they're like, yo, we can't go into 2025 with this boo boo ass roster group. They went and drafted two motherfuckers from the same school. That's how down bad them boys said we're not going in. John Mechie put you in the backwood, my boy. Hutchison put you in the backwood, my boy. Who was the other boy? Robert Woods. He went to. I think he signed with the Steelers. It's not
Yeah.
looking. If you was a wide receiver on that roster before this off season, backwood season is for you.
Look,
Pack your shit up.
look, bro. Y'all had chances and you fucking
Had
blew it.
chances.
So you out of
Had
here. Get
chances.
out of here.
Got out of here. But
You
I'm gonna
know.
let go ahead. Continue. I just want to go on that lower rant. Go ahead, Mo.
No, cut in whenever, man. Cut in. No, as far as Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he's disappointed me 2 years in a row. And that defense is so good, and they've slowly morphed Patrick Mahomes into Alex Smith. I know part of it is they got, they traded away Tyreek Hill, and they traded away, some of the explosive elements of that team, and they've tried to bring it back with a Xavier Worthy, a Hollywood Brown.
Hmm.
Rashi Rice is coming back, so you can see he's starting to get weapons to where they can open up the offense, and I think that also hurt them in the Super Bowl, not having that explosive element to their offense. So
Royals.
Royals,
Hmm.
Elijah Badger if he makes the team.
Hmm.
Um, so you see they're kind of bringing in weapons, but until I see them change their offensive philosophy, he's just going to be hard to trust, amongst those top guys. So, yeah, I mean, I can have him as my QB2, but if I have him as my QB2, I want one of those super elite 6 or 7 guys to pair with him. Because he could blow up and he could lead you to a ship like he did, many years before the last two.
Could.
Or they can just keep the same kind of philosophy that they're going to be a defensive first, and that philosophy has won 3 championships. So it's hard, to shit on because they have had that success, but you kind of think maybe they may open up the offense just a little bit more only because of their failure in the Super Bowl. And who was the last guy we were talking about? Oh, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray. Man, I want to believe in Kyler Murray. I also
Same.
picked up a lot of him in the last offense. I thought off season. I thought he could be a rock solid number 2, but he's just so fucking inconsistent. Like, he has highs and lows, and you wonder if he could see over the offensive line. And they brought in Marvin Harrison Jr., who paired with Trey
Yeah,
McBride and
Trey
some of the other
McBride
pieces. You're thinking, man, they have the look of a top offense, but it just never kind of
never
happened
clicked.
last year. It never clicked. So hopefully, Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. were playing Call of Duty all off season and practicing and becoming best friends, because that's what they need to do. They need to kind of get that chemistry going. Maybe Marvin Harrison can be moved more around the field instead of being an outside sacrificial kind of X receiver. Because if they don't, then he just seems kind of wasted as far as a pick, that high, and you're not, doing what you can to get that guy fed. Um, so I don't know if I trust Kyler Murray. He's another guy that I would want one of those super elite guys if I'm going to pair him, as a foundational piece. That's my thoughts on it.
Now, I can get groovy with that. And before we move over to the running backs, I will put my little feedback on the last guys that we spoke on. Patrick Mahomes, what happened with them, or what happened with him, is that that offense became old and slow very quickly when the injuries
Mm.
happened. When Rasheed Rice went down, it was like, all right, damn, that's basically was like your main guy. And then you tried to make it work with Worthy, and that needed some time to adjust. He did have a really good Super Bowl, and I think he will have a better year too. But that offense needed youth. It needed speed. So yes, they went out and they got Royals. They went out and got a Hollywood Brown. They went out and they drafted Worthy from last year, and then to even go even further, they went out and got Jarek McKinnon's clone and a Brashard Smith, and so what they could do. So
Mm.
that overall offense, I think, can be good or better
Yep.
in 2025. And then with
Yeah, the speed.
Kyler Murray was one of those guys that burned me hard because pause no diddy because I was just like you. I did go out and believe I slipped the Kool Aid because I thought last year was going to be the year we see him take that next step. I feel like for the last few years, Kyler Murray has been at that same level. He hasn't improved, but he hasn't digressed, went back either, right? So I think that with Kyler Murray, we just need to see some improvement. Or year two with Marvin Harrison Jr., I think honestly, Kyler Murray is the reason why Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't have a bigger rookie year because there were times where he just wasn't throwing him the ball. There was a reason there was a time where we were trying to figure out how long is it going to be until Trey McBride catches a fucking touchdown. Like that when
He
you're the
scored. He
tight end,
scored a touchdown in championship week.
I'm telling you, I mean, he got you your bread and butter when you needed it, but
Yeah, I needed it then. Yeah.
but like for the whole, as we all would expect, I consider McBride tight end. I guess Bowers will have like I saying that now, I would consider Brock Bowers as my tight end one, but I wouldn't argue with somebody who would consider McBride their tight end one. There's no reason why he went that long and having that low of touchdowns to be considered one of your main target shares in that whole offense. So that being said, before we head to our running backs, once again, this episode is brought to you by Fast Draft, the fastest best ball format out there. Go get yourself some money. They're giving out $250,000 in cash prizes. And all you need to do is use our promo code fourth, and they will deposit your first deposit up to $50. I repeat, if you use our promo codes fourth, they will double your first deposit up to $50. And now let's talk about running backs, which I don't think will be very long because so nevertheless, I just acquired one of these guys, and then I have a few shares of the others.
Mhm.
But as my RB1 of 2025, I'm going with Bijan Robinson. But foundational pieces I would consider is very short. It's only four. Ashton Genty at 21 years of age, Bijan Robinson, 23, Jameer Gibbs, 23, and then the oldest of the group, Saquon Barkley at the ripe age of 28, but I also think he's one of the craziest just specimens at that running back position. I would even low key, if it wasn't for Derrick Henry being 31, I would even have him on this list. But I think his clock is sooner than Saquon Barkley's, so
Mhm.
I had to leave him off this list. But what do you think of that group of guys, Rocco?
Yeah, yeah. If you're going for super elite running back, I have no disagreement. No disagreement there. These guys will provide a weekly advantage to you because it's going to be hard to touch their production over the course of a season. Another thing with foundational pieces,
Mm-hmm.
I think foundational pieces, what they do for you is they give you that week to week consistency.
Yep.
Guys you can count on. There's plenty of guys that'll give you spike weeks, but there's very few guys that will kind of keep you in games week to week,
Mm.
month to month. Along with those spike weeks that absolutely win weeks. So those guys to me are, you know, without a doubt that top tier. Um, as far as acceptable number ones, I have a list of a few guys. They're either dusty or basically a little older, have some injury concerns.
Mm.
In no particular order, I got Brees, who was a league winner in 2023, kind of came back down to earth. But there are signals that he's going to have a much better year in 2025. JT, who actually did win people championships last year down the stretch, I can attest he won me at least 4 leagues. Josh Jacobs, who was kind of the forgotten guy, who was, the whole offense for Green Bay. And if they improve their passing attack in 2025, he should even see more openings in this year. CMC, who I'm banking on having a resurgent year, and who was the running back one for many years. So if he's healthy, I think he can get right back to that for at least a year or two. Um, and King Henry, he's a guy that I have him. I'm not trading him because I'm just gonna ride him out till he hangs him up because he is just a beast that's gonna get you 10 plus touchdowns
A
every year,
cyborg.
1,500 yards. He's just what we call an alien.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's never really been hurt. He had a foot issue. That was the only real injury he's had his whole career. He's never, knock on wood, he's never, blown knees out or
Mm.
anything crazy like that. So he's a guy that I'm just gonna kind of roll with until he's done.
Yeah.
So those are guys that I feel comfortable with as my RB1. Um, in a dynasty setting, you want youth, but in a dynasty setting, you also want to win championships, and those guys can definitely help you do that.
Yeah, agreed. I think when you're looking at those guys, like you said, Bijan, Jameer Gibbs, Ashton Genty, Saquon Barkley, uh, Derrick Henry, I have him as my RB1 on a few leagues. Shoot, I could even, if you really want to, I can't. He's not a foundational piece, and I want to throw this aspect out there for the audience. When I think about a foundation piece, don't get me wrong, volume is a part of it, but that can get a little wishy washy because
Hmm.
then you can start having guys, people considering Kyron Williams as a foundational piece. I don't consider Kyron Williams a foundational piece. When I look at these four that I listed with Ashton Genty, Bijan Robinson, Jameer Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, yes, do they get volume? Yes. But they also are elite talent at that position, right? I don't consider
Right.
Kyron Williams as an elite talent. I think he's in a great situation and I think he's a good football player, but I wouldn't put him in the same league as those guys when it comes to
Mhm.
talent.
The
So
thing with Kyron Williams, I think until he gets another contract, he's hard to trust because we've seen how they just discard running backs in LA.
yeah, yeah, agreed. So like even for like a honorable mention because we think he can have this type of production, but Kenneth Walker, he can be a dark horse for a RB1 this year.
Hmm. Hmm.
Guys like Josh Jacobs has weeks where he's in that top three of production because he gets the volume as well in that overall offense. And then, we got there's other guys we could potentially see as in that RB1 category, just depending on just how their overall offense evolve, like a Caleb Johnson. I have to see how the overall share of the pie is in 2025. And then once again, Jalen Warren is only on a 1 year contract. So Caleb Johnson can easily insert himself in
Hmm.
2026 in that foundational pieces of guys in that overall offense. So I think there are a few guys to keep an eye on because that list could increase,
Yeah,
right?
I mean the rookies can definitely jump into this conversation.
For sure,
Absolutely.
for sure.
You know, but until they do, it's hard to put him in there except for me for Ashton Genty because he was a top 6 pick
Mm.
and he's guaranteed touches because some of these other rookies have other people in place that could dilute their rookie season a little
And
bit.
then when we were also thinking about these foundational pieces, right, for running backs, I would consider these are the only guys where I would consider really going with a blockbuster trade for. Whereas like these, you're not going to see me in 2025 trading two firsts for a Jonathan Taylor, right?
Hmm.
But you will see me. I'll gladly ship that shit out for Bijan or Jameer Gibbs or Saquon Barkley of value.
It's
Or
just
maybe
so
not
hard.
maybe not Saquon, but I'll take that back.
it's
Maybe not a two
it's
first,
so
but two.
hard with those guys because the people that have them do not want to trade them unless they
Yeah,
get one of those foundational pieces back, or you sending them three plus first,
yeah.
which not a lot of people have to just throw out.
Like a player's foundational of how guys gatekeep them, of how like the value of it just skyrockets. To get a Jameer Gibbs is going to cost you. To get you a
Yeah.
Bijan is going to cost you. To get a Ashton Genty outside of a rookie draft, it's going to cost you. And it's going to cost, I feel like Ashton Genty's value is even more after the rookie draft. I mean, like when I say, to clarify, Ashton Genty is more than the 101. What like to trade to get the 101 before Ashton Genty is there, I believe costs you less than what is going to cost you after Ashton Genty is already selected. And
They're
then
three first, no doubt.
right. And then don't let him go stupid crazy year one. And then you might as well not even trade for Ashton Genty at that point. If you don't have him, you don't have him. So when like there's other guys that I do like at the running back spot, if I
Hmm.
have me a good like Chuba. We talk about him all the time. I love me Chuba. He's RB1 on the Carolina Panthers. He's in an offense that I think will be better in 2025. But there's other variables in there. We they've been noted of, they just signed Rico Dowdle. Do I think he'll cut so much into the piece of the pie? No, but I still think he'll get his touches, right? And then they're not. I wouldn't put them in the best offense. I still got to wait and see. I think their offense is promising, but I wouldn't put them in the. I'll say they're right in the middle. Carolina Panthers offense. I wouldn't put them good. I wouldn't put them great yet. I
Mhm.
think they have the potential if things start clicking. If Xavier Leggett starts clicking. If a T Mac just comes in as his rookie year and sets himself as that wide receiver one, they have the foundational pieces to be a good offense. So other running backs that I think would be cool, like you said, you spoke on a Brees Hall. Some people have Brees Hall in that Jameer Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Bijan 2 years ago, 3 years
Mhm.
ago. I wasn't in that group, but I mean, I think you could have Brees Hall in that. He's in that Davon A Chain, Jonathan Taylor. Hell, people's new guy, Bucky Irving. You know, a lot of people love him. You could even potentially, keep that there for, like as a RB1. No, I'm like Heenan. He's a R. When I think of Bucky Irving, he's in my honorable mentions of a RB1 because he's only 22 years of age, right? And then he's on a good offense.
Mhm.
Just got to see with him because he's all the smaller guys. They get banged up. So
This is a guy I feel better as a number two.
okay. Hey, some people been loading up some of these trade packages I've been seeing with Bucky Irving. They've been loading the park as the RB1.
Fuck, I got two first for him, so I can't complain. But if I if I if I have him as my number one, I'm not feeling confident that I'm gonna win a ship unless I'm just like stacking badass wide receivers and maybe even a tight end. Um, just because he's smaller and there's other guys there, and I want to see it again. Maybe I'm tripping. I put him kind of in that same category as a Devin A. Chain. A smaller guy that I don't 100% trust all the way.
Yeah, I felt that. And then listen, I took very much advantage of the Bucky Irving hype of this offseason. And don't get me wrong, I still have a few shares. Once again, it's all about return of capital. He most likely was a third round pick for you. And if you can get a first rounder or a plus, depending on the sucker, I'm doing that shit Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. You feel me? I'm doing that every single time.
I got two firsts for him. How about that?
I'm telling you, doing that every single time. Every time. I don't think it's that hard, honestly. Once again, it goes to even with Jaden Daniels. When last year, which ended up having me winning the league, I traded out Jaden Daniels in the hype when he was going crazy. Some people might have done it, but I got a whole load of players that ended up helping me winning the chip. This is when I talk about return of investment. Yes, we all love our guys that hit off for us. Don't get me wrong. CD Lamb is going to die on my fucking roster. Okay, I want everyone to know that if you're coming again, he's going to die on my roster. But I have traded Jamar Chase here and there this offseason if the value was sexy and right. If I felt like it was good for my dynasty team. There's guys that I'm okay with coming off on. Now, those foundational pieces are going to cost you a little bit more. And when I say a little
Yeah,
bit more, a lot more. Actually, a lot more. I'm gonna double down. I need the yesterday's price isn't today's price type shit. You feel me?
man. I sold Jamar Chase last year, and I still regret that shit. Even though it basically turned into Brandon Ayuk, um, BTJ, and Xavier Worthy. yeah, just to see Jamar Chase be the overall, dynasty uh, champion. Basically, he was
Mm,
basically, the MVP of dynasty fantasy football, whatever you want to call it. I, I felt like if I'd have had him on my squad, I might have gotten closer to that ship, and I
yeah,
kicked myself in the ass. So you got to be careful with trading these guys, and make sure
I
you're
agree.
getting proper value because a lot of times when you trade these guys, you kick yourself in the fucking ass over and over because it didn't. It seemed like it was proper value at the time, but after the season, and you see you know them just kicking ass all season, it's like, damn, I can't. You just can't replace that kind of hammer.
That's why if it is considered, or if I want to be very selective with my wording here. If it's a player that I consider foundational, then I want in the trade at least to be getting a foundational piece back, right? So how excuse me, in one league where I ended up in a pay league, the year before I ended up acquiring Jamar Chase because I gave away the 101 and a couple of other pieces to get it. So I basically ended up flipping basically Marvin Harrison Jr. and some other picks for Jamar Chase and some other assets, right?
Hmm.
As with Jamar Chase and once again my wide receiver core, I like to have a very strong one. So my wide receiver group was Jamar Chase, C.D. Lamb, Drake London, and Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers let me the fuck down. Fuck you, and you pissed me off. But Jamar Chase and CD Lamb held me down. CD Lamb, I feel like I would have won the chip if CD Lamb didn't get hurt towards the end of the year. I was runner up, so that core got me to the chip. I this year have traded away Chase because I still have a very strong core, but I went and got Jameer Gibbs. My RB room was very lackluster, and I felt like as the overall projection of the league, or not league, but of the course of the season went along, that was going to be my Achilles heel. Was my RB, my
Yep.
RB spot. So I was like, all right, do I want to come off a Chase? No. Do I want to hold Chase? No. But I have, when I was looking at the structure of my team, and I like to go off of projections. And I'm a riskier guy, so don't get me wrong. And does it sometimes bite me in the foot? Yeah, but a lot of the times I am right. So I'm like, I have a CD Lamb who I consider, and a lot of people would consider in that top three of guys. So I'm okay there. I have Drake London, who I'm projecting could even have a higher season that he doesn't have buck ass Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. Penix, I'm projecting Drake London to have a top five type season. So hopefully he could potentially just how I want to word this, cover the blow of Chase just a little bit, right? And then I have Jameer Gibbs,
Hmm.
who's now becoming my RB1. And then I have Chuba as my RB2. I have a RJ Harvey now in that flex piece. And
Hmm.
now I'm feeling more decent. My projected points for week one basically remain the same. It didn't go down, it didn't go up for week one, where I'm actually facing one of the better teams in our league that year. And then for the overall season, my overall points are looking relatively the same, but I feel better because of one, my receivers, and this also plays a part in people don't notice you the week of the buys. I had CD and Jamar Chase in that week 10. It was looking bad to the point where I'm looking to lose against the most boo booest of teams in the league. Boo booest, and I was not going for that shit. Right now, I
See,
think. Go ahead.
no, see, I don't even look at buys. I feel like if my guys fall on the same buy, that means I'm smashing every other week. So
Mhm.
I don't really give too much of a shit about buys until I get there, and then I'm like, oh shit, maybe I need to make a trade. But Generally, it doesn't factor um, into my evaluation of a team. But I wanted to kind of expand on, the fact that you basically traded Chase for Gibbs. I
Mm,
think that is the move. That if you're going to trade away a foundational piece, get in another foundational piece. Because I think tearing down, if you don't get the right guy that you've tiered down to, or you're getting a guy that can't ascend to basically being a foundational piece,
mm,
I think that's when you're really gonna be disappointed with the outcome, even if it's multiple firsts. Because if you're trading away that foundational piece, that piece might push those first into being late first. So instead of so when you're trading away a Jamar Chase
mm.
to a team that's picking at the 110 or 111, if it's not a super deep draft, you know, those are basically, you know, ineffective lottery pieces.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is a six.
yes.
This is a 16 teamer. So
Oof.
even put that in there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
If it's a 16 teamer, I'm not trusting the first at all. I want the hammer back. Or
Mm,
I need, assortment of pieces that can be, if not, you know, foundational pieces can be really close to that foundational realm, or that can ascend into that foundational realm. So I think you did right. My trade, not so much.
I think, and that's really good that you hit on that point of where he tried to. It was a lot of back and forth. He wanted, instead of Jameer Gibbs, he was like, could the trade happen with Kyron Williams? I said,
Fuck no.
fuck no.
Fuck
Fuck
you.
no. That's not, it's not happening.
Man, blocked.
No, I was like, no. If I'm coming off of Jamar Chase, I need to have Gibbs. There's no if, ands, or buts, and that's kind of where the direction it was going. The trade almost didn't happen just because I was just like, bro, I'd rather just keep Chase. Honestly, if this is the pieces that I'm giving back, if it's not Jameer Gibbs, I don't want it. Because once again, I'm looking at Jameer Gibbs right now. He is, even though he does share the backfield with David Montgomery. One, I don't always think this is going to be the case. Two, he's 23 years of age, and I'm looking at the traits of it. He is one of the better backs. And then when he started getting more of the load, because David Montgomery got hurt towards the end of the year, he went
No kidding.
absolutely fucking stupid. So I I needed to help me feel better of coming off of Jamar Chase, who right now is 25 years of age, very ripe. He's in the prime of his NFL career. I think with Jameer Gibbs, he's not in the prime yet. He's ascending, and I still think there's more to come from Jameer Gibbs, which made doing this trade a lot more uh, okay for me to do. If I wasn't getting Jameer Gibbs back, there's no deal. I didn't want Kyron Williams. He's not a foundational piece. Once again, don't confuse volume for foundational.
Yeah,
That it
I
does
wouldn't.
not correlate.
Yeah, and to kind of to piggyback off of that, I wouldn't confuse production with being foundational
That's
in
also a
and of
good
it
point too.
in and of itself, because
Yeah.
I feel like I need to have projectable production at least 2 years out. It's at least 2 years out in a dynasty setting. I need to be able to project that. And right now, you see you see signal that Kyron Williams is not as safe as we think he is, because last
Yeah.
year they invested a third round pick in Blake Corum. He didn't get onto the field, which led to more confidence of Kyron enthusiasts. But they come back and do the very same thing in 2025
Again.
and draft Jarquez Hunter, who is an even more explosive back. And we're talking about Kyron Williams in a contract year. We're talking about a Rams team that has drafted running backs and just thrown them away after we thought they were safe.
Mm.
Um, so he is not safe until he gets re-signed. He is not safe, and I can't project him to do the same thing on basically any other team because he's in a perfect situation. So I would be looking to trade Kyron right now to anybody that thinks that he is a foundational piece.
The highest bidder.
I have zero Kyron, so I
I
don't have any to trade.
think I have one piece, and I'm even if and I honestly at this point,
Trade
I
him to
think
Max. Max a believer.
he's a block. I probably have him on a trade block right now. If I do have him, he probably is on the trade block. If I'm being quite honest with you, because once again, and I'm not saying that Kyron Williams is a bad player.
Hmm.
He's just somebody who I think is on the downward trajectory, and I don't
Hmm.
care how many times they talk about, oh, contract talks are going well right now. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like he can sign a 5-year contract with the Rams. I still don't want Kyron Williams. It's
I
that
would feel a little bit better if he had contract insulation.
fuck him.
Uh,
That's what
I would feel better if he had contract insulation, but I guess some of my honorable mentions that we haven't touched on,
yeah.
I'll just kind of list them off real quickly. Devin A. Chain, he makes me a little nervous because of his size, but and the coach could be a little bit on the hot seat. But that speed and his pass gaming chops make me feel good with him as a number two. Some of the other guys, James Cook, who is close. He's close to being an acceptable number one. He's done it in back to back
I was gonna say
seasons.
that. I would be okay with him as
Um,
number one.
he's a
Yeah.
little bit smaller, which makes me a little bit more nervous, but he's very, very close to being acceptable foundational piece.
Uh,
He's also got a contract issue as well,
I was gonna say
so that
Rocco
makes me a little bit nervous.
on that one. If James Cook ends up getting a contract, would that help you put him in that RB1?
He would be at that point. He would be very close. I feel like even if he did, I would feel better with him as a number two.
Too. Yeah.
But he is right there. He is like right. He is right there. He is
Like
right there.
you wouldn't argue with somebody if they did have him as an RB1. You could see why they would. They would go that direction.
Yeah, yeah, he's close. I mean, and he's done it in back-to-back seasons. Um, just personally, I would feel better with him as a number two. Uh, but you can argue for him. You can definitely argue for him. But he's a guy that's very close. Another guy, Chase Brown. Um,
I mean,
he feels good as a number two to me.
R2.
I don't know if he can get to that number one status because he's the guy that's efficiencies goes down the more carries he gets, but he's a rock solid number two. Um, all of the rookies could very well ascend, so I want to see how they do. But a lot of those rookies, I have them as my number two, and I feel good about it. And they can definitely ascend into that foundational piece um, as soon as in season. Like if we see it, it could be like I see it, I see the vision, they're doing it, and now they feel good as an acceptable number one, or they can even join that top four. Honestly, because rookies, rookie running backs are the fastest that can ascend to that top tier status
Fantasy
because
relevancy. Yeah.
yeah, those guys win championships down the stretch every year. Bucky Irvin won me a championship down the stretch in one of your leagues. So those guys are league winners. Those running backs that over the second half of the year, once they start to get those consistent touches,
Mhm.
they win leagues. So you know, hopefully you got some of those guys because um, those guys are the guys that can jump into, they can jump two tiers really quickly.
Now, I actually have a question for you. And because it's going to piggyback off what you said about the rookie running backs. With RJ Harvey being 25, right? Let's say he has an amazing rookie year. With his age, even at 25, and I mean, don't get me wrong, that's still young, but with the shelf life of a running back, would you ever consider RJ Harvey a foundational piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I can see him if he steps into a pass heavy role early on, and we're talking about, Sean Payton envisions him as his Alvin Kamara. I don't think if he's absorbing a lot of punishment up the middle and that's his role and he's not getting 50, 60 targets early on, then I'm more worried about him. But I think he can absolutely ascend really quickly because you look at all the targets that Javante Williams, old busted ass, got last year that kind of put him close to RB2 status in a lot of weeks. You
Yeah.
give those to RJ Harvey, and now you see the vision of the guy that can quickly become an RB1,
Mhm.
at least low end. That's one of the prerequisites if you're not just killing it on the ground is all those catches. And we've seen Sean Payton love to target his running backs with with pass catching opportunities. He's one of the best at designing a screen game. So if you're putting RJ Harvey in those type of situations, he can easily ascend very quickly.
And to end off this segment, we're going to combine the quarterbacks and running backs, foundational pieces, and then our next episode will be the foundational receivers and tight ends. But out of the young running backs, who has the other than Ashton Genty, you're not allowed to say him. Who has the highest chance of going in that, becoming in that RB1, in that Bijan, that Jameer Gibbs type range of guys? Who has the highest chance of the young running backs?
That's a good question. Um, to me, it's a couple guys.
No, no, nope. You only could use one. I
Only
can't, I can't,
one.
I can't let you. I can't let you do it. I got to do only
All
one.
right, all right, all right. If I had to pick one,
Mhm.
I think I think I would go with Trevion Henderson.
I
I think
like
he's gonna
it.
be peppered with a shit ton of targets. We have a kind of passing attack that has a lot of questions with the with the guys receiving passes. We've
Hmm.
seen this coaching staff, well, at least Josh McDaniels, pepper the running back position heavily, and we've seen Trevion Henderson. He's a guy that if he gets it, he can scoot, he can go, he can take these short passes and go to the house with them. And a few of those house calls, will really bring him up in value because what he looks like to me on paper, he looks like the explosive element for this team, um, which sorely needs guys that can kind of take the ball and take it to the house. Um, so I absolutely think that he could get into that stratosphere. A guy that he's comped to often is Jameer Gibbs. I think Jameer Gibbs has a lot more wiggle to his game.
Agreed.
But as far as pure explosion, I think he's right there with Jameer Gibbs. And he is in a less crowded room because the Lions have David Montgomery, which Ramondre Stevens is sorry, bro. You are not no David Montgomery. You can't hold that man's jock. So um, he's a guy that can definitely provide passing volume. He can definitely push for 50 plus receptions year one, and he can really do something with those receptions. Um, so it wouldn't shock me to see him, kind of border on to, that top tier.
And my answer, and I feel like it's going to be an easy one that for y'all to guess. Caleb Johnson is going because since he's at the ripe age of 21, he's still so young, and he's in an offense that one they don't have many pieces. So at the very moment, he could very much be a focal point of that offense if he hits a great stride. I think they have a underrated offensive line, not the worst. And then at the same time, just got to see what the criminal Arthur Smith does. And with that overall offense,
Lock
like
him up.
lock him up. And that's why I had to call him a criminal. Lock his ass up, please. But that is our episode for today. We went over foundational quarterbacks and running backs. Our next episode, as I stated, is going to be the receivers and tight ends. And once again, this episode was brought to you by Fast Draft, the best ball game out here. Get you some money. Get you some money. $2,500,000 in all rookie, all defense, and all flex formats using our promo code fourth, and they will give you up to $50, double your first deposit. I repeat, using our promo codes. Fast Draft will double your first deposit up to $50. And this was a fun one, man. I do like looking at it. It really makes you think of, you know, your overall dynasty teams. Who are the guys that you can count on to really give you some type of value, your points, your main points on these teams? And I can't wait to talk about the receivers and some of the tight ends. I feel like just like the running backs, that can be very picky, just it depends on who you consider foundational. But nevertheless, we're going to talk about it, we're going to discuss it, and we're going to bring it to y'all like we always do. Till next time, y'all have a wonderful day wherever you view us at, wherever your method of viewing us. We love you all. Excuse me. We love you all. Till next time, take care.
Most of y'all.